Hello, brothers and sisters. Raven here. And as I've mentioned in my last live stream, I'm going to be doing something a little bit different this video. I'm going to go and look at the movie The Village. If you didn't watch, the reason I'm doing this is because I used this as a bit of an example when I was writing the book I'm working on. And it's a little bit to explain a little bit more of how to define a cult. As I was going through this and writing about it, I went and I watched the movie again and realized there's a lot more to talk about than just what I'd put in the book. So right now, I'm going to go through, explain what the movie is for anybody who hasn't seen it. Just know, spoilers, not a big deal. If you ask me, it doesn't really hurt to know because some of them are kind of obvious, but I just want to let you know in case. And I'm going to just describe in general what happens in the film, what it's about, a little bit of the setting. Then we'll go into more specifics within the film and their significance, and then just a general overview of the connections I'm seeing and how this film helped me kind of see a more general definition of a cult. I kind of doubt it was his intent, M. Night Shyamalan's intent, to make this about cults. He may have, may not have. I have my doubts because of different things he said in special makings of and stuff like that. And I think a lot of people, when they watch this, it's fantasy, so they don't really see the connection. I didn't make the connection until I started actually going and looking into the cults. And then when I did, I was shocked. What happens in this film is that you've got this village, of course, this town, way back, and they live out on their own. They're in the middle of this forest that surrounds them, and they never leave because they have this fear, because in the woods are supposed to be these creatures, and if you enter the woods, they'll come after you. As this story goes, you have one character whose name is Noah. He's very autistic. You have a second, her name is Ivy. She is blind and loves the third character, who's Lucius. These three characters are the main ones. What happens is Noah, in his autism, is very quote-unquote innocent, and he doesn't fully understand what's going on, and he kind of feels in love with Ivy in a sense, though that's not what it is. She just sort of cares for him like a child. However, Lucius, Ivy get engaged. Because of it, out of his frustration and anger, Noah attempts to kill Lucius. Because of the injury, Ivy begs the leaders to let her leave, go through the forest to find a place where they can get some good medication for him. What you find out at this point, they kind of reveal to her a bit of the truth so that she can go. Creatures are not real. They made them up. And they created outfits to make themselves appear to be these creatures to scare people to keep them in the village. Because they see everything outside of their property evil, wrong, and dangerous. So they send her out to get the medication. She comes back to heal Lucius. And that's how it ends. But what you also find out in this is that the village itself is fake. This is actually occurring in modern times. These people went through horrific experiences in the cities and left and wanted to live this kind of peaceful life, so they created this fake village and kept the truth from all of their children so that they would never have to suffer this. There's a lot to talk about in this. I'm going to try to limit it. I'm going to try. Being a writer, there's so much I can go into on this. There's so many things to talk about. But I want to stick to things that are connected to cults and things that remind me of Homestead Heritage. One thing that's very interesting, that is very different in this from what you usually think of when you think of a cult, is you see a lot of conflict within the leaders of this cult. The ones that are telling the lies. Because they seem to often battle within themselves if it's really best. Usually in a cult, there's no doubt in the leaders' minds. They're set. So this is a little unique in that sense. Then you've got Noah. Now, as you see from the very start of the film, he knows what's going on. He knows the secrets. He knows what's happening. And he sees it as a game. He sees it as though it's all an act, all pretend. But he doesn't reveal it to anybody because he doesn't understand fully what's going on. It kind of makes him look a little insane to most people, when really it's because he actually knows more than the others. It's the irony of this that I find very interesting. Now, this is something I'll go into that's kind of connected. He is what you could consider the most innocent of characters. And yet, he's the one who knows the truth. Kind of ironic. Think about that. That's something that I think comes up a lot in this. Again, I'm not going to say I know the intent, but it certainly shows the truth. Even though he has this innocence, he knows the truth. What you find out shortly after this is how they have guards standing edge of the property all night watching for these creatures. And they call these creatures those we don't speak of. This is something you'll see a lot of. This is something in cults. This is something that shows up all the time in that. Everything they do is controlled by this lie. People have these tasks, these jobs, these rules, these things they have to follow constantly. All because of a lie. And they do it out of fear of something that doesn't exist, something they shouldn't be fearing. I realized that's the connection. That's the link. That is what you see in all these cults. Even though different ones are slightly different, there are many connections in different places. This is the simplest example I find, and this is where I see the connection. It's about controlling people. It's about having them follow the way you think is best to live. And doing it, controlling them, keeping secrets, keeping the lies, by fear. That is the common denominator I see in this. You'll notice they'll bring up, quote unquote, those we don't speak of, which makes the title in and of itself a complete lie, because they talk about them constantly, all the time. They give it this title that is a lie because they want to make it as horrific, terrible, as unspeakable as possible. But they have to constantly talk about it to make sure the lie sinks in and to indoctrinate. It's how it works. One of the first things you hear that's very interesting is this conversation where Lucius is speaking with a friend, and he brings up the idea of the outside world, the cities outside of where they are. And his friend, who is keeping watch at the time, says, why? There's nothing but wickedness out there, wicked people. Once again, that's the kind of thing a cult will do. Everybody but them is telling lies. They're the only ones that are honest. They're the only ones that are true. They're the only ones that really love and do the right thing. Everybody else is in the wrong. Another thing you'll notice comes up. May seem like a small thing, but I find has a bit to it, because there's a bit of symbolism to it. But I want to stick to one part of it. One rule they have is that you can't have anything that is the color red. At first, it seems kind of silly, seems kind of weird, but the idea is that creatures have a problem with it. But why do they add this feature? Why do they create this lie? Why do they create this rule? You find out, you get a little bit of a hint of it later on in the film. Blood. The color red. That's what these leaders fear. Because of what they've experienced, because of what they've been through, what happened to them, they dread that color. They dread the idea of blood and violence. They prohibit it. Note the irony of this. They're causing all this fear in the people around them, people under them. But at the same time, they're putting rules on them to remove their own fear. They feel all these people need fear, but they can't have fear. It's very interesting because there's this one point in the movie where Lucius walks off into the woods. The leaders create this fake invasion of the creatures because of this. And Lucius comes out and fully admits to the town what he did. One of the leaders, the main leader, comes to him and says he's braver than he knows. You stop and you think about it. He's not just putting on an act here. He means it. He's baffled because he himself can't face his fear, but he sees Lucius does. This even goes further later. One point in this film, Ivy herself is just devastated because of the injuries that Lucius takes. She thinks he's going to die, but she begs her father to let her go back to the main villages, main towns. Her father's very hesitant, but she says she fully trusts him and it's up to him. She is so against disobeying, so about trusting him. Even though she is trying to go against their rules, trying to go against what they say, she's going to stick with him. This is what gets through. This strikes him. This gets him. It's come to a point where it's now his choice, and she's letting him have it. She's giving it to him. This is something that I've heard about, I've seen, is how it's often the children, the sons, the daughters, that can get through. Sometimes more fully than others, and sometimes in a good way, sometimes in a bad way. But they're what can get through. And you see it throughout this. You'll notice there are many times things are going wrong and leaders are themselves ignorant of it, or let it go because it has something to do with their children. That's their weak point. That's what seems to get through. I've even heard of this with different cults, including Homestead Heritage, where they'll have rules, they'll have things set in place, but because of the leader's child, it'll bring them to a point where they'll break that rule and they'll remove that rule. And it's the child that breaks the barrier. It's why I constantly pray for the children of those I know who've gone to Homestead. I've seen there are many ways the Lord could use them, do something amazing with them. It's even an example in this film. When Ivy's father decides to go ahead and let her take this journey, what's interesting is the meeting among the leaders. They're all very upset with him at first for breaking their rules, for going against it. They don't let it go too far. Eventually they kind of go along with it. But they won't hold this so strongly because this is not as much of a religious cult. They talk in multiple places about prayer and things, but they don't say much about it. And when they seem to have a sort of prayer, quote unquote, at major meals they have, you don't really see it. It's something else. There's no real prayer. So it's like there is no real religion here. This isn't about some kind of beliefs. This is simply about a certain way of life they feel, not just they want to believe, but they should believe, and all of their children need to believe, to follow. This is what shows, yeah, a cult doesn't have to be around a religion, doesn't have to be around these set beliefs, but it also shows how it is, when it's religious, that it really can be so much more unbreakable in a sense. You'll notice in Ivy's trip what happens is very revealing of what's going on here with innocence, ignorance, all that. When she goes out, Noah also sort of breaks out, uses one of the costumes again, and this time kind of goes out in the woods after her. Now, you can tell if you pay attention to the way he acts with her. It's like he's playing a game with her. He's doing what he usually does. She thinks he's really one of these creatures coming after her. You've got him thinking it's a game. Once again. You've got her thinking that's this dangerous beast. They're both lying to themselves. They're both being innocent. And yet, all it does is brings his death. Even within two most innocent people of this society, following the lies, it still brought this death. It doesn't work. Doing this does not fix the issue. And that's huge. When they send Ivy out, they send her at first out with two other young men. And when they do, they tell her everything. But they also give her this little bag of beads and tell her to pretend this is something that will give protection. Kind of create another myth into their lives, add a lie on top of the lies. Young men, overcome by the fear of the first lies, of the lies they've been hearing for so long, they don't accept this new lie. They have trouble really taking that. It shows two things. One, once you've indoctrinated somebody, how hard it can be to get rid of a lie. And two, it shows how fear is where the control comes from. This new lie does nothing to cause fear. It's supposed to cause hope. It's supposed to cause freedom. But they're so overpowered by the fear, they won't take that. It shows how much power that has. And so these young men go off and leave her alone on her trip. It's why it goes down the way it does. Now, at the very end, what happens is, because she didn't realize what happened with Noah, Ivy kind of unknowingly rekindles the lie, makes it so that the lie can keep going, and the truth doesn't have to come out. So the leaders immediately decide they're going to stick with it, and they're going to keep this community going the way it's been going. They have decided to keep the lie. Because of the way this ends, with Lucius getting the medication, Ivy getting through this, Noah's gone, so what he's been doing, his trouble that he's been causing, is done. You normally would think happy ending. In my opinion, it's a tragic ending. You now have these people who have had to admit what they did didn't work. They're still going to push it on others. They're still going to lie, tell tricks to push it upon others. These people can be so gentle at first, can seem so caring, so lenient, so nice, which is usually not what ends up happening in a cult. Usually the strictness is pretty strict. Here, they're pretty lenient unless you're actually going to go and try to make contact with the outside world. Problem is, as the lies, people don't realize what that is. And what you'll notice if you pay attention, in the film, Noah starts causing trouble. He starts killing animals and doing things, and people get confused what's going on. Most people, because they think it's these creatures, why are they doing it? The leaders, because they know it's not the creatures, so who is doing it? What's going on? And when this happens, what it leads to, you notice different people start sharing their stories. Start sharing the hardship they went through before coming to the village. The truth starts coming out. Within that, there's a major hypocrisy here, and you can see it in cults in general. Every leader, their family, has a box that they keep locked up. And in this box are records of what happened, what tragedy they suffered that led to them coming out here. But they claim in the film, they keep this as a reminder, so they don't forget, so they stay on guard, and yet they'll never share it with the young people. They'll never share it with others. They say it's there to keep their guard up, to stay warned so they don't forget, and yet they're going to make it so nobody else finds out, so it is going to be forgotten. Why do they do it? To remind themselves why they made this place. To keep motivating themselves to continue with it. This is something you see in the cults. This is something that happens all the time. Even in the bad times, they keep trying to remind themselves how important it is that they keep this community going, that they stay a part of it. They do the same thing. It's a hypocritical lie. They are keeping this going, telling lies to these kids, putting them further danger that came out of this quote-unquote innocence. And they're causing the very kind of thing they were fleeing. It is not solving anything. And yet they stay in this. They stay in this trap. They are lying to themselves as well. They have gone into it even deeper. You have gone from this little society, this little group that you could say has that innocence, and then maybe they're not really a cult. But at the end, they cross the line. They fully admit to themselves that it's not working, and yet they continue the lie. It is a cult. At the end, it is a stronger, firmer, more deceptive cult. To me, that is not a happy ending. That is a tragedy. But it's an important one. It's one thing I hear people talk about all the time, that I can understand what they're getting at. I can understand what they're trying to say. But I think there's a major lie behind it. And that's this idea of children's innocence. When they use it in this sense, though, they're usually talking about innocence as in lack of knowledge, which isn't always all that innocent. But that's what they like to refer to it as. If you remember that quote I showed on Blair Adams' gravestone, innocence is what they like to take advantage of. Innocence is a major tool of cults. Just as in this film, they use that innocence. They want that innocence to be there, but they themselves don't have it. Creating this, they are no longer innocent. Hypocrisy. I will say, this film was very revealing to me. Because one thing that's peculiar, you have this interesting contrast. Everything they do is about putting on this act. Everything they do is to keep this image the way they want it. It's to keep their lies going. So who are they really? That's what this is. It's all an act. It's not just because they want to put these rules to keep things nice there. They're trying to get rid of their former selves. They're trying to get rid of who they were, the life they had. They're trying to make this new life. The problem is, the way they do it, it's a fake life. It's not real. It's fraud. That's something they even admit in this film. Even they themselves are wearing costumes. Not just to prove things to these people, but also to convince themselves. That's why I find this film really interesting to look at, is it just shows you where the commonalities are. Where is the real foundation? Where is the real foundation of what is a cult and what they do? And it's all about keeping their secrets to create the kind of life they want everybody to follow. Keeping people there in fear. That's what this kind of cult is all about. We're supposed to have fear in the Lord, and that's it. Fear anything else, and we're under control of the wrong things and the wrong people. I'll see you guys next time. God bless.